Well, hey, welcome back to another podcast. We are glad to be sharing about microchurch. One of the questions we get asked probably the most is what happens with kids with microchurch? And one of the things that you're going to learn, especially from Melinda today, is that we really value families. We value multi-generational connection as much as possible. And that might look different with every group, but we know that Jesus valued kids. We think about Matthew 19:14. Jesus said, "Let the kids come to me, because such is the kingdom of heaven." So we want to have that kind of a time with families for microchurch. Melinda, tell us a little bit, what have you heard from people who've asked you this question, and what have you done to help them figure this out?
Yeah, there's so many things. One of the questions that first gets asked is, what do we do with kids? And even the phrasing of that, and I know what they're asking, and I'm just reading into it a little bit too much, but it also implies that we have this concept in America that we do something else with the kids, that we separate the generations. And there is a time and place for that. I have friends who are passionate about being specific, having specific age-appropriate ministry to kids, and I fully, wholeheartedly believe in that. But I also, there's two things at once. There's power in multi-generations interacting. I want my kids to see Grandma Judy praying and interceding and learning and, figuring out what that looks like, and seeing other generations knowing God can carry them through the storms of whatever they're going through, and He answers and hears their prayers. So it's kind of twofold, making sure that all the generations can interact and learn from each other, but also we want to make sure that age-appropriate ministry is happening to kids. So my personal conviction that I have is that I want my kids to be with me as much as possible when it's age appropriate for them to be in microchurch with us. But we have done a lot of things. And so the short answer is it really depends on how many kids are in your group and the ages of those kids. So we're just going to share today some things that we've done in the past. And kind of our ultimate goal is to be able to get our kids in with us as soon as they're ready. And able to interact. One of the first things that we did right from the get-go, because all the kids when we were first starting were used to being in a regular kids' church environment, and so they were expecting, a slide and games and fun and all the things that a really big church is able to provide. And when you're in a small group setting, it's not as easy. It's going to look a little bit different. And so right from the get-go, we actually did pay someone to come in and lead kids' church for us. And I'm going to share what that kind of looks like here too. But we paid them to come in because it was somebody who actually had been in youth ministry that I had led years previous. And they were going somewhere to a church on Saturday night, so it worked for them to come Sunday morning. And in this particular situation, we use Life Church curriculum. Life Church has free kids' church curriculum. Video-based, but it has all these questions and interactive, like it just gives you a layout for your service. So it gives great questions and talking points and prayer points and ways to interact with the kids. And so it's free. It's a great, great resource. And at that time, we had between 13 to 15 kids, ages 0 to probably 5th grade or 6th grade, in that range. So we had a bigger group. And very quickly we learned the older kids wanted to stay with the adults. So we gave them the choice. They would stay with us kind of for the first part if we would sing or do worship and talk about our week. And then they could go with the other kids if they wanted to. And usually the little tiny kids would want to. But then also we would give them the option to stay when we would read the scripture. They love to try to recall and tell the story back to the adults. And so often they'd stay through that part and then they'd go back. But then some older kids would want to stay during some of the questions and then they would leave. So it just worked out where we were able to pay somebody. Another situation, another group we've had, the parents were able to take turns and go and do some sort of age-appropriate kids ministry. And that can literally look like mirroring what the adults do as far as reading a story, having the kids tell it back, and just asking them some questions, taking prayer requests. And then when there's extra time of playing games or watching a video, another thing that we've done is use the video curriculum. Superbook, that's what it's called. Do you want to share a little bit like what Superbook is like?
Well, what I was thinking about was just more philosophy-wise. One of the things that I really, really love is when kids have the opportunity to see their parents engaged in the Bible, and for them to be engaged in prayer, for them to be engaged with worship. There's something that is pretty cool when kids see their parents engaging with the presence of God. So we really love having those moments for kids to do that. So, but there are also times that some of the subject matter that the passage dives into may not be PG. And so during some of those times, you may have some wisdom, and that's a great Sunday or whatever day that you're meeting to have a Superbook episode, because Superbook is really powerful. It depicts a Bible story, often the same Bible story that we're going through, and they can enjoy that and then even do some of the same questions in response to the video that they just saw. But it is important that if there's going to be a passage that deals with more sensitive things, that maybe it's a great week that adults are there for the entire time and the kids are only there through part of the time, and then they go do their own thing. But there is such a breakdown right now when kids are always doing ministry or receiving ministry separate from their parents. I know it's a little bit harder for parents to be able to handle some of the pressure that's there, because sometimes it can be a little crazy. Sometimes, there can be things like, a child is chewing on your furniture and you're trying to think, oh, how do I handle this appropriately? Or some of the just things you got to learn how to deal with. But we decided early on that our house is just simply a tool to be used for ministry, even if it gets a few more bruises here and there from people beating up on it. That's okay, because that's why we have our home, is to be used as a tool for God to use, for people to meet and to ultimately grow more in Jesus.
Yeah, Superbook is a great resource. Also, Right Now Media, if you have access to that, there are a lot of great kids curriculums and videos on there as well. I would say, though, the thing that is faith enhancing or challenging, even for the adults, is when little kids are able to be with the adults, because they often will ask the questions that the adults are thinking about, but are too scared to bring up because we don't really have the right answers. And we have to figure out, how do we answer a 7-year-old in a way that they can understand and is also biblically accurate when we're trying to digest and figure out scripture as well. So it is a beautiful thing to have multi-generations together. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I do. I love those questions that come from kids, because kids, they don't know the right pat answers that many of adults have learned we're supposed to give. And they just say it like it is. And they say, why did this happen? Really? I don't understand this. And it is so refreshing to have that kind of perspective. And we really, really value being incredibly honest and open, and having like real questions and having real discussion points that happen during our time together is so valuable. And I think it really helps our kids to realize you can ask really difficult questions, and it's okay if we don't have the answer right then. And one thing that we'll often say is, if we don't know, is we can say, you know what, there are some amazing tools out there. We can learn to find out what was happening in that situation. And next week, we're going to be able to give a better answer. Like, why did this happen? What was going on? And so it's okay to say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you. And I think that is helpful for kids to see that you can be honest as an adult and work through a passage together and not even have all the answers that we wish we knew at the moment.
House church or microchurch is is just something that can be really, really messy. And this is one of those things that we just have to embrace. As far as you might have a baby crying, you might have a toddler running around and banging things, and depending on where you're meeting, if it's in a home or if it's in, the clubhouse at your apartment building or whatever, some of those things can get sensitive. And so I think one of the beauties of microchurch is being able to talk about these things and kind of work through and plan how you're going to handle them as a group, of just being mature and talking to each other and figuring out, okay, it's okay. We're going to have, please bring some quiet toys, is what I call them. Toys that aren't going to be, making loud music or whatever. Toys for your kids. And depending on their ages, they're happy, if you only have, let's say, one little toddler in your group and the rest happen to be older, they're usually probably happy playing with some toys. Or you need to pick up your house so that it is toddler-proof areas that they can run around. And that everyone just realizes, hey, it's beautiful that we've got little kids, a baby crawling around among us is just fine. My parents, and part of it might be the generation that I grew up in, my parents brought me to everything and included me everything. And even when I was really little, I have early memories of deep spiritual, theological concepts that are ingrained in me because I remember processing them and thinking about them at a very young age. And my parents processed and talked with me about them. And so really that brings me to the number one thing is we can't expect our kids to be properly discipled if we only take them to church for 1 hour a week, is what it really comes down to. If you're a parent, is we are the number one disciple, or we are responsible for their spiritual teaching and training and raising up in the Lord. And so we're going to talk about that another time, where just what it means to disciple our kids and how we can do that. But just keep in mind that really it comes down to the parents. And so it's not, we can't throw everything, all the weight of, concern that this has to happen in this 1 hour. But there is a lot that does happen because of the fellowship of other kids and other generations. And so it can just be, it's a really beautiful thing, but it's not going to look perfect depending on the ages and the number of kids that you have. So there's a lot of resources out there.
Here's one thing too, as we're talking about kids, I also want you to realize that you may not have any kids in your group, and that's okay. Yeah. Even though we love multi-generational groups whenever we can, sometimes just a situation of life isn't going to allow for that. And you may end up leading a microchurch and it's all focused on college students because you're doing this on a college campus. Or maybe you're doing this in a senior living center and everyone there is a senior, and that's okay. Even though we love the power of having all kinds of different age groups in the room, it doesn't mean that in every group that's going to take place. And you may not have kids. It may be all people without children, and that's cool too. But when those moments arise, we want you to realize that life is fun when you get things a little bit messy once in a while. Life is fun when not everything goes as planned. And kids are amazing for helping things not go as planned. And it does make it even more fun when we do it that way. But just be open to it.
You also may need to just even adjust your times of when you meet. We have some young families right now, and so we've had to change times in the past because we need to meet earlier because of nap times, and the summer we'll meet in the evenings, and so we have to meet a little earlier because they have bedtimes. And we all just make an adjustment for that situation to allow these families with parents. Just encourage them, because we have so many parents in our situation who they ask to come, but they're like, oh, but I have kids, and they're worried about what that's going to look like because they feel bad if their kid might start talking or babbling or whatever. And so do whatever you can to ease their comfort in coming to these situations, but at the same time, it's okay to talk about what it's going to look like ahead of time and how comfortable are they in essence training their kids to be able to, okay, we don't talk whenever others are talking. It's literally that simple. And sometimes some kids maybe don't have that training yet of like, we take turns, and so when this lady's talking, we're going to let her talk, and then when we have a question, how am I going to raise my hand, or am I going to touch my dad's arm so I can have a turn to speak? just being aware of teaching them how to interact in a group with multi-generations. When
Something that I think also to be aware of is that when you invite someone who has never been to church and they're just curious about learning about the Bible, this is not the time to shame parents and say, boy, your parenting isn't that great. This is an opportunity for them to come and experience a Discovery Bible Study, experience microchurch without condemnation from us. And we do want people, if this is their first experience of church, we want them to realize the whole family is welcome, that depending on what their kid's situation is, we'll perhaps do a special kids thing that's separate to start out with the ultimate goal of let's all be together. But it may be hard in the beginning, and that's okay. Just have an incredible amount of grace with those that are wanting to check out the Bible, and allow the Holy Spirit ultimately to guide and lead and direct a family to getting closer to Jesus, understanding who he is, allowing him to make the transformation in their lives. Because you may have people who come and they really, really are curious, but they don't have a clue as to what it means to be someone who follows Jesus. So just a reminder, extra grace required with this subject matter, because we want to help people grow in this, but it's not going to happen all at once, and it may take some time. So embrace the messiness. It's a good thing.
One other idea that I was thinking of that we have done formatting wise is we had some older elementary kind of tween age kids that weren't ready to help like lead a kids church portion of the service, but we didn't have any toddlers or little tiny kids, but we had like younger elementary kids. So all that to say, we would do kind of a kids portion at the beginning, include the kids in our opening question of the past week and what God has been speaking to them, what they're thankful for, and they love to share. And then reading the passage and doing some kid appropriate questions, discussion that they would like, and then we let them go. So we in essence had like a mini service with the adults, with the kids, and then we have a swing set in the backyard, or they would go play because they were all old enough we could trust them to go play together. So we would do basically a mini kids service, if you will, and then we allowed them to go and play too. So there's just so many different routes that you can go, and it will move and change and look different over time depending on the ages and the number of kids.
And to me, one of the coolest things about what we do for church is a time to have a meal together.
Yeah.
Because when we connect together in that way, when we spend time literally connecting around the table, there's something that happens that is spiritual. And there's really cool ministry that happens even when you're not reading the Bible, just when you're hanging out with other families, all in the name of getting to know Jesus better. There's something amazing that takes place. So allow God to move. Allow moments where Jesus can come and be real to the kids in your group. I believe there's so much power in the room with children. They are really able to grasp far more than we give them credit for, and their understanding is way greater than we even think that they have. So open up your mind, invite them into discussion, let them be involved in that process whenever it's possible, because they're going to grow and they're going to see that they can actually understand the Bible too. And they're going to fall in love with Jesus. They're going to fall in love with God who has created the entire world as they read that passage. It is so much fun to see their eyes light up when they understand that they can understand the Bible as well. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for getting together with us once again. And we love talking microchurch. So feel free to check out other resources on this page. And we are looking forward to our next time getting together with you, and hope that this is encouraging for you as you're thinking about this journey, or maybe you're already on this journey. You have a great day today.